Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 134. Man, my sleep is so messed up, dude. I got back yesterday from Kat's place at around 1 p.m., something like that, 1 or 2 p.m., and I slept until 9. I took a 6-hour nap, something like that, and I woke up in the evening. I'm like, well, what do I do now? And then I went back to sleep. It's so messed up. I'm so screwed, dude. Let me tell you about a fun story. I don't know how much I'm gonna have to talk about this week. There's a couple things we watched. I didn't really play any new games that are really worth talking about. Just kind of games that I've already talked about. Played a lot of City Heroes. Played a lot more FF14. Did my job quests and stuff like that. And I'm just, I don't know. I'm in a little in between phase where I don't have the energy. Also, because I'm working on the video a lot more, and I'm in full swing working on the video, so I just feel like my time is a little more absorbed at the moment. I'm in that in between where I don't have the energy to go play a whole new game and all that. So yeah, you're gonna get a couple movies today. We're talking about the movies, but I want to talk about a little story that happened to me before I get into the comments from last time. So yesterday Friday I went over to Kat's, and it was raining. It was raining a lot more than I expected it to, and I kind of messed up by not bringing an umbrella. And it was at the point where the time where I usually leave to go back home. I was looking at the forecast, and there was a lot of rain predicted, and specifically that was an issue because I'd brought my laptop. And it's in my backpack, and I don't really want to get drenched and get my backpack drenched when I have a laptop in there. So I decided to just stay overnight, and then leave sometime in the afternoon, actually, because Kat was going with some of her gal pals up to go do some shopping. They were going to have a girls field trip day. And I stayed with her just to see her off. And then I walked to, I was like, oh no, she offered if I wanted to come. I kind of just wanted to go. I wanted to go home. I wanted to go to my bed. I wanted to maybe get some work done. So I just let her have her day with her friends. So I'm walking down to the bus stop. And the rain starts coming down, and I'm like, okay, all right, let me duck in. So I ducked into a thrift store, looked at some books, some DVDs, stuff like that. Till it cleared up, I started walking a little more, make some more progress, and then it starts coming down. And as it's coming down, I happen to pass this little tent that's been set up in front of a house. And the tent has this banner on it. There's 3 guys sitting under it, and has this banner on it that says, "We'll pray with you." And they asked me, "Hey, do you have a moment?" And it's starting to come down. So I was like, you know what? Why not? See, this is my problem, is that I like having stories to tell. So I will engage. Most people, they go, "No, sorry," and they just walk on. I will engage with stuff like that. And some, I was at the mall one time, and I was waiting for Kat. We were going to meet up, and I got held up. I was looking for her. She was in the mall, and I got held up because this guy comes up to me, and he goes, "Excuse me, sir, have you heard of God the Mother?" And first of all, mother is earned. Second of all, no, I have not. And he just talked my ear off about God, this fucking cult that he's in. And I was like, yeah, all right. And then I after a good 5+ minutes of this guy talking to me, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to go to your church, dude. And he was like, okay, well, you might go. I was like, no, I don't think I will. And then I left and I met Kat and I was like, yeah, I got held up by this guy who was telling me about God the Mother. She goes, I saw that guy too. And I looked it up afterwards and I was like, oh yeah, it is just a cult. So, but you know, it's kind of a funny story. So I'm standing under this tent with these guys. And the first thing that the dude in the middle, who was kind of like the spokes guy, I could tell, the first thing he says to me is he goes like, do you have a relationship with God? And I was like, I mean, like, not really. I'm not like a religious person. And he goes, well, you know, like, you don't have to be religious to have a relationship with God. Like, you can just be thankful for things and have a relationship with him. Like, my wife died 5 years ago. Tim's wife, she died 2 days ago. And Jerry, he's 3 weeks sober. I was like, congratulations. So we kind of get to talking, and I'm just like kind of engaging with them and just like, yeah, you know, yada yada. This is like what I'm talking about and all that, and this is what I do. And they asked me about religion and stuff. And honestly, they were pretty nice. And they said that I had a humble soul. Watch out, guys. I got a Mr. Humble soul coming through. In fact, one of them liked me so much that they got up and they actually took out their wallet and they gave me, because they found out I was going to the bus. He gave me a ticket for a free ride ticket for an adult one way. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really nice. Thank you a lot for that. And, you know, eventually the rain cleared up. I said goodbye. And I made my way to the bus stop. Thankfully, it cleared up while I was on the way, and I was thinking like, yeah, I got this. The weather's cleared up. It's not raining anymore. It cleared. It was clear until the bus got there. So you know, I was feeling pretty good. I was like, it was just like it was a surprisingly nice experience. You know, I stayed dry. I got this free ride. I said, you know, God works in mysterious ways. So the bus gets there. I get on. I slide the free ride ticket in, and it says, no rides remaining. And I said, God works in mysterious ways. When he gave it to me, I asked him, hey, does this have an expiration on it? Because I know the bus tickets, obviously, they have, like, if you buy, like, the day pass, obviously it's stamped with the date, and when you put it into the machine and the bus, you know, it'll tell you, oh, you can't use it today. It's not the day that it's for, you know? So I knew that there was some kind of there might be limitations on it. I'd never seen, like, a free ride pass. He goes, oh, no, there's no expiration on it. And there's actually, I looked at it, there is a column where it says how many rides are on the card, and it says 0, but the ink is really smudged, and I think he just couldn't make it out, and I didn't really know what to look for, so I couldn't really tell what it said until I looked at it a lot closer. So yeah, I just paid for the bus like regular, which is fine, you know. I budget in bus fare to my, you know, how much I make, how much I spend. It's just funny, you know. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, I'm not converting. They were Baptists. That's what they were. I'm not converting to baptism? Is that what it's called? I guess it would be. I guess it is called baptism. I'm not converting to the Baptist faith, but I was just thinking about this, like, well, I didn't get, like, the free ride out of it, but what if I got home and I found out that there was, like, an accident? Because I was sitting there for, you know, I was talking to them for about 15 minutes. I was thinking, you know, the bus comes every 15 minutes. What if the bus that I missed got into an accident? Or what if there was some crazy, like, suicide bomber or robbery on the bus or something like that? And me talking to those guys made me miss that bus. Then we might be talking about something. Then we might be we might be onto something here. That would be impressive. That would be the triple God works in mysterious ways. But at the end of the day, I didn't get my free ride, but I did get a funny story out of it. So there's that. I got home and did my thing, which is napping. I want to get into the comments now. We have a question from last time. Question comes from Lowe's. Regarding Black Friday, I don't know if it happens as much in other... So I asked last time if Black Friday is a thing that exists in other countries. Don't think it happens as much in other Latin American countries, but lately there's been a lot of appropriation of American culture here. XD. I have seen some places that get together to drink for St. Patrick's Day, for example, which I thought was funny because I was like, no, St. Patrick's Day, that's an Irish thing. And then I was like, wait, no, that's an Irish American thing. They don't really celebrate it in Ireland. It's like specifically an American holiday. Like they have it, but it's not nearly as big of a production as it is over here. Halloween is also more normal now, although without the part of going to ask for candy. On those days, there are several costume parties. Black Friday exists here, but only at the level of sales. Nothing like the South Park episode. I don't know the South Park episode. Technically, Black Friday is just sales, but it's like the rapture of sales. A few days that you can buy something cheap, and the commercials use the term Black Friday. I see. Do you do more celebrity impersonations? I think you have a hidden talent for that. Not on a Jim Carrey level, but for a family / friend laugh. I see it. I do like doing impressions. I like doing... They're probably bad, right? I think when I was a kid, weirdly, I think I had a pretty good Christopher Walken. Yeah, you need like a phrase, right? You gotta get... You need like a phrase to work into it. Like Christopher Walken, the one that I would do. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. He would he has the classic like what is it? God. I feel like I'm on the spot and I'm embarrassed now. Christopher Walken, he goes, gotta have more cowbell. No, it's not thick enough. It's like you gotta have more cowbell. You have to like hold certain people's voices, you gotta like there's like a tightness to your mouth, like your whole mouth muscles. So Christopher Walken, he got what does he say in Ripper? He goes, maybe if she was 20 more pounds, 10 less IQ points, then I'd be interested in her. He does that kind of a thing. What do you mean? How's the coffee, Saj? Ooh, nice and hot. Nice and hot. I also like Obama. I like doing Obama. He goes, let me be clear. What can I read out in the Obama voice? Ooh, I got this thing the other day. It was a gift. It's called the Cow Maru. It's this weird. It was bought off Temu by a family member. It's like this stress ball type thing, but it's this weird face, and it's from China. It's like this weird like head, this bald head that you can like squish, and it smells kind of weird. And it has this amazing translation on the side. This amazing translated description of the item. So let's read this out in Obama's voice. You go, the Kalmaru. For the people who have such troubles, recently that forget tishing a smile, feeling stree, and tending to pass by someone. You must be unconscious of the passage of time. If once you got this feeling, which is the one you cannot spare. Now for a small present, let's attach to write your feeling, which you cannot say directly. In a massage, it is safe to... If this fucking line is so good. All right, say it, Obama. Say the line. He says, in a massage, it is safe if throw it in a quarrel by husband and wife. That's right, this stress ball is domestic abuse. It's domestic abuse safe. There are 4 terps of faces, so please choose a favorite one. Precautions for use. Although I'm getting a little in it. I gotta tone that down. I haven't done this in a while. Although the quality of the material, should I just fucking stop doing this? What's another one? Oh, I can do Kermit the Frog. I think every good man has a Kermit the Frog impression. Kermit the Frog. What would he say this? Precautions for use. Although the quality of the material and the white powder on the surface are harmless, please do not eat calamari. When dirt is conspicuous or sticky, please sprinkle a baby powder lightly after washing it with water and draining. Please do not leave it on printed matter, etc., because the ink and paint may adhere. Can I do any other celebrity voice impressions? I don't know. Maybe I feel like I could if I had it on the brain, maybe I could. My brain's kind of like a little fried right now. It feels kind of like a rock, so I'm not thinking super well. But I do find them fun to do. Yeah. Oh, I used to do like a Doug Walker impression for Kat that she really liked. Let me keep reading off the count. Let me do my Doug Walker reading off this. Please avoid such places where it receives direct rays or becomes high temperature. Is that good? When a small child uses it, a guardian must attend on. Since these fracas are made by craftsmen's hands one by one, someone may have appeared, such as a pimple, a boil, a rough skin, a pockmark, a spot, and a freckle. And although there are some air bubbles and each face has variations about the softness, it's no problem in the quality of character. That's my I could do Linkara. He goes, please do not pull projection parts such as a nose and a lip too strongly. It may be worn pieces. To reduce the stickiness of the material used to make this product, it has been sprinkled with starch powder. You may see white powder come from the product, but this is not a defect. There, that's the Kalmaru. Ooh, I can read the they have a weird other description of the Kalmaru on the side. I don't know why they have 2 of them. I think this is more of like, the other one is like a uses of the Kalmaru. This one is supposed to be like I guess like a spiritual kind of sell on the product. What's a good impression? Oh, my neck. What's a good impression for this one? I'm really trying to rack my brain. I know there's other people that I can do impressions of. What are like most popular celebrity impressions? Oh man, that wasn't a good thing to I feel Trump is such a hard one to do because Trump is really about the mannerisms. You can kind of land on his sort of very specific accent, but really you have to nail down his manner, like the way it's all these little things he tosses in there. He always goes like, "Oh, Kalmaru, there's a wonderful product, the Kalmaru. Let me read you about the Kalmaru." I'll do Steve Harvey. Are you laughing every day? It's spelled like that. Are you crying? Are you peasant? Are you busy? Are you doing your best? Are you expressing you feeling correctly? Are you telling the meaning courtainly? Are you... what the fuck does this say? Communicating? Are communicating with your important person. All right, let's try catching the heart. And then he goes, then he points to the board and it says, ding, 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 catching the heart. And he goes, what? That's just not right. Meeting, huh? Meeting, huh? There, that's all I have to say about celebrity voices. I want to talk about Palworld for a second. I think the Palworld thing's really interesting. So if you need your memory refreshed, Palworld is like this game that was sold as like it's like a Pokemon ripoff kind of thing. But then you get shots of like the Pokemon and they're like on an assembly line and they're making realistic machine guns and stuff. And you're like, what is this about? So the game came out. It is absurdly successful. I'm honestly really shocked at just how successful it's been. And like something like 3 million sales in 3 days. Like really crazy numbers. Really crazy high numbers for a game from a relatively obscure studio. I hadn't really heard of them before this, but yeah, I thought the concept was kind of intriguing. You know, Pokemon made by people who aren't Pokemon is always interesting to me because I have long had a thing. I feel like Pokemon is the worst version of those. I feel like Pokemon is the worst at being Pokemon in terms of what I like or what's appealing to me about it. So, I don't know, genuinely Palworld looked pretty interesting, but there's been this controversy around the designs of the monsters themselves. So if you don't know, Palworld is this game, you're on the ground, you play a little you've got a little character, and you can catch these pals, these monsters, these rip-off Pokemon, and you can catch them. They have all these different abilities and elements and themes and stuff like that, and there's a whole Pokédex type thing, and then you can basically enlist these pals to use their unique abilities to do, like, work for you. So you got, like, a fire one, and it's powering a furnace kind of thing. There's ones that are, mining in the earth. It's like Pokemon, but with like realistic capitalism applied. Exploitative capitalism of animals, right? Which is kind of a fun concept that never gets explored that much in Pokemon. So I was like, oh, that's neat. All right. But the designs, I looked at them, and even just seeing the trailer and not like really delving that deeply, I was like, yeah, a lot of these just seem kind of like rip-off Pokemon. Some of them look cool. There's been this big controversy around so-called plagiarism. I don't know if... and I don't know. Perhaps this is a hot take. Perhaps this is a disagreeable thing. Wow, it is raining really hard outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. But Palworld is, for the most part, I don't know the full extent of it, but, like, fine. I was looking... Okay, so there's a couple articles on the apparent plagiarism and rip-off Pokemon designs, which, first off, if you just want to make a game with rip-off Pokemon, I don't, like, really think that that's too big of an issue. Especially because it's like a completely different game. So that's the first thing that really makes this seem like kind of a non-issue to me, which is that Palworld does have some Pokemon elements, like the gameplay elements. There's the monsters and there's the catching. But what I discovered is that Palworld actually isn't aiming... Its main source of inspiration isn't actually Pokemon. Pokemon's just kind of a bolted, like an add-on. Not a bolt-on, but, it's just kind of like a mashup of the actual base of the game, which is the actual thing it's ripping off is RimWorld, which is why it's called Palworld. And not just RimWorld, it's also building off of their previous game called Craftopia, which has similar kind of gameplay and systems. And so it's like is this really infringing on Pokemon's, like, territory? Outside of the monster catching stuff, it's a pretty different product with a very different appeal. It's not like an RPG battler. It works very differently. Like as a game, it has I feel like it has a completely different market to it. Secondly, I feel like a lot of the plagiarism accusations are a little overblown. To be clear, some of them are extremely blatant. Some of them are like, oh, you took that Pokemon and you kind of changed its shape. And you added a little doodad to the head or something. Some of them are very blatant and have merit to them. Other ones, I feel like are... a lot of the ones, excuse me, that I've seen feel like real stretches. Like, okay, there's like a sheep pal, right? And, oh, it's ripping off the Wooloo from Pokemon. Wait till these people see sheep. I hate to break it to you, but the Wooloo was not a terribly original design in the first place. Or, oh, this one has a kind of similar shape. Or, oh, this pal has like a fluffy tail. Look at this Pokemon with a fluffy tail. And you hit a point where it's like, there's like over 1,000 Pokemon. I would be shocked if you could even make a game with a similar like monster catching premise that didn't have a ton of overlap with Pokemon in like little like really some nitpicky things. Honest, like there were other things like there's a Video Game Chronicle article, and the cover photo is there's this pal that it has like it's like a cat. It's like this purple cat. And it's got these yellow eyes and this sort of sharp tooth grin. And apparently there's like, I think it's like an Alolan form of Meowth or whatever that is also like a kind of darkly colored cat with yellow eyes and a sharp tooth grin. And I was like, that's just the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. That's just a thing that's existed... Like a cat with yellow eyes and a big smile has existed since... When did those books come out? How old are they? That's definitely something... Hang on. Alice in Wonderland book. Is it 51? No, 1865. 51 was like the movie. 1865. So, I mean... That's just, and specifically the Palworld one is a lot closer to the Cheshire Cat being like purple and all, which is okay. What, fine. Again, some of them are blatant. Like, okay, there's one, I don't know what what's that? It's like the owl sniper from Pokemon. There's a pal that looks really similar to that. There's one that looks really similar to, I can't remember the name. It's a grass type. It looks kind of like a brontosaurus, and yeah, a lot of them are, but a lot of them really do just feel like, yeah, I don't know, they both had their takes on like fantasy hedgehogs. Yeah, they look like hedgehogs. Some of them are very overly defensive. Now, the other part of the accusation is that the suspicion that these designs were created using generative AI, which okay, well, first of all, so here, where does that come from? It comes from the fact that the company's CEO is really into AI, which is a cause for concern, and that's fair. At the same time, there is no proof that the game was actually made using generative AI. It kind of just feels like a ripoff. Like, that's it. At most, it's just Pokemon ripoffs. In a completely different context and setting. If it was created with generative AI, I think that and there was like proof of this, then sure. Well, that would be a different situation. But there's no real proof of that, as I've said like 3 times, like a broken record. But hey, you know what? Let's say you're concerned about using generative AI. And let's say it's even proven, right? Cool. Just pirate it. Literally just don't support them financially. it's if you don't like the way that something was produced and you don't want to give them money, if you don't want to give the creators money to show any kind of support for it, you can just pirate it if you still want to engage with it. It's fine. If you just want to try it out to see for yourself, you can just pirate it. It's totally cool with me. I think you should be comfortable with that. I think piracy might not have to. I don't think it's necessarily a great thing if it's like the first option for everyone for everything. But I think it's something that more consumers should understand is an option to them that's on the table, right? Like, hey, we wanted to watch The Flash to laugh at it. We didn't want to go spend money to see it, to support it. So we just pirated it. We just watched a shitty cam rip. And like, yeah, I would not have, after watching it, I still am glad. I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we pirated it. That's it. Like, I don't have an ethical problem with piracy, and I don't think most people should either, to be honest. Yeah. That's my thoughts. Do I have anything else to say on Palworld? I don't know. It looks neat. It looks kind of interesting. Looks like it could be fun. And to be honest, some of the designs I looked at, like that Anubis Lucario, I was like, that's a cool design. That's a cool looking creature. It's a ripoff, but like I think it's cooler. Here's the thing, like if it's good, I don't really mind that much. Cause it's like good. If it's good and it's different, I don't really care. Like I love JoJo, and you could easily look at like Phantom Blood, right? You could easily look at like the first 30, 40-ish chapters, even into like Battle Tendency, right? And you could easily look at that and just say, oh, that's like a Fist of the North Star ripoff. And you're not entirely wrong. Like Araki was very much following the trends of the time, and Jonathan is like kind of a ripoff Kenshiro. Honestly, kind of a blatant ripoff of Kenshiro. But JoJo's is like, it's even from the beginning in actual content is very much its own thing, and it's got its own appeal to it, and eventually turned into a totally unique series with totally unique ideas that were influential on its own. And if this developer, God, what are the name? Pocket something? What are they called? Pocket whatever. Pocket something. What was I saying? If they want to take one of their old games and iterate on it and add like a thing to be kind of to make it more interesting, this like creature catching element to it, and they take a bunch of design inspiration and ripoff from like Pokemon, and they make not Pokemon, and they make it put into a totally different game, and the game is like good and the designs are neat, I don't really care that much. This is how stuff gets made. I don't know. Like, this is how new stuff happens. Stuff is iterative. I don't think it's that big of a deal. There were some concerns that I saw over directly stealing from fan art, which I don't know if that's super substantial. Some of them I saw was like, no, that's not like a grass type themed elephant monster. And I saw like 2 examples of that, and I was like, those really don't look the same. But outside of just the premise of a grass type elephant. There's one that's like kind of like a witchy Firefox design, which I think is probably the closest one. And if it is based off of fan art, that isn't cool. And that would be, I would condemn that. Oops. Just because that's like an independent artist, and having your design jacked for a game kind of sucks. But is it different? Ooh, let's question me for a second. Why is it different when Pokemon? Well, the problem is that it's like, if it looks pretty direct. It looks pretty direct. If you're just like taking the literal design, then I don't think that that's cool. But like doing nothing to change it, like nothing at all. Yeah, I think that's where I draw the line. But pretty much every single one of the Pokemon designs is like, or like the Pokemon ripoffs are different in some way at the very least. If they actually took fan-made artwork and just ripped it off one-to-one, that's not cool. But if there are actual like changes and differences and some kind of creative filtering performed by real humans, then I just don't really have much of a problem with it. And again, it's a completely different type of game. Like it's really not competing with Pokemon. I don't think it's going to cut into their sales at all. I don't think it's going to cut into their part of the market. I think it's fair. I mean, I love Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors used a ton of just like traced art of just other like, here's a render of Bayonetta that we traced over with our own character. But it's a completely different kind of game. It's just like a big mashup of shit. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it because I'm okay with people taking something and just altering it and making it their own thing. And it's up to you where you draw the line and when something becomes its own thing, quote unquote. And if you disagree with me, I can totally see that. I see the case for it, but that's just my stance on it. I think I'm pretty consistent on that. Palworld, Friend World, Rim Job World. So we watched a couple films. So I got to Kat's house, and usually she meets me at the bus stop, and then we walk back to her place. But she didn't this week, and I got to her door. I was thinking, oh, maybe is it because she was worried about it raining? And she opens the door and she looks. She has this like face, and I'm like, hey, you didn't come to the bus stop? And she goes, I threw up. So Kat ate peanut butter that was 2 years expired after knowing that it was 2 years expired. And she got super sick from it the morning that I went over to her place. So I'm kind of obligated to go into like caretaker mode and make sure that she's okay. And she didn't eat anything for like the entire day. It fucked her gut up real bad. And so, well, she wants to watch some Disney movies. So I guess we watch some Disney movies. She does this thing. She like always turns it into like a little game where she's like, why don't we spin a wheel? Or like, answer me these riddles 3 and I'll pick from a selection of films. And I'm like, give me the one with the hose in it. So we watched The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I have never seen before. It is one of the few. I took a look back at the list of the Renaissance era Disney films, and I realized that the only 2 that I hadn't seen were Hunchback and was it Rescuers Down Under? Yes, that was the only other one I hadn't seen ever. So we watched Hunchback, and I feel like I don't really have that much new to say on it. Because I know, I feel like millennials' greatest mark on culture is video essays about the Disney Renaissance movies and Simpsons references. That's what I feel like I got a lot of while I was growing up watching YouTube videos made by millennials. And so I feel like I've already heard a lot of the common criticisms of Hunchback and praises of it, and I basically agree with them. Do I need to explain the Hunchback of Notre Dame to people? I don't. You got Quasimodo, he's a hunchback. So one thing that I was really curious, you know what, look this up because Kat said that it wasn't a problem, but I'm really curious. Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1996 film. 1997, there was a live action Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is kind of weird. Let's see. Was there any controversies in Europe? Let's see. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything. I was kind of surprised about that because The Hunchback of Notre Dame, based off of the classic novel from, I don't know what year, Victor Hugo's novel from 1831, a classic novel about the hunchback who is the child of this abandoned orphan child raised by this French judge in Paris, falls in love with this gypsy girl. So that's what it was. Okay, so that's what I was surprised about. So the word gypsy is in the U.S. No one gives a fuck about that, and no one has ever used that as a slur. It's like in the UK, in the UK, what they call cigarettes, which I don't feel comfortable saying because culturally it's weird to say that. But like over there, it's probably maybe like in the modern times where we have a lot more language crossover, it's changed a bit. But like that's just a normal word with absolutely no slur connotations over there. And over here, it's the same with gypsy. So any European who gets mad at me for saying that, that's your fucking problem, dude. Why don't you take care of that? We don't have any problem with the Romani people over in the Americas. And I was really interested because I know it's considered a somewhat like a controversial slur over in Europe. And I was like, did they, because they say it a lot in this movie. It's about fucking gypsy oppression in France in the 1800s. And Frollo is the villain, the judge guy, is super racist against them and refers to them as like gypsy vermin and like rats. And it's pretty like intense. It's pretty intense. And he is straight up racist, and they are pretty upfront about his art. Like, they're dirty people. They steal. They cheat. They have no morals. They practice witchcraft. Like, it is okay. Yeah. All right. This is the cultural perception that the movie is capturing. And I know that that's like still a thing in Europe. And I was really curious. I was like, did this play well in Europe where that's like, that word is used really differently? And she said there was, as far as she knows, there was no issue. And I can't really, just a very, I'm doing like a vague, what am I trying to say? Like a cursory glance. A cursory glance at the Wikipedia page, because there would usually be like, oh, controversies or something, but I can't see anything, which is sort of surprising. Maybe it was just a different time. Let me just look this up. Hunchback of Notre Dame. European. Ooh, wait, European version versus US version. Alternate versions. On IMDb. Let's see, some song choices were changed. Some things were censored from some of the more crazy ass scenes in this movie. Another song was replaced. Yeah. Okay, it kind of just looks like certain songs were replaced by with just like alternate language versions, as far as I can tell, which is sort of surprising to me. I guess it was just fine. Yeah, so you have Quasimodo. He's in the tower, and he's lonely, except he's not because he has his three shitty, fucking annoying gargoyle friends, which are so what I heard about this movie was, oh yeah, it's really cool. I just wish the gargoyles weren't in it, and I have the exact same thing. I have literally the exact same opinion. There's a lot of really cool things in this movie. There's a lot of bits that I actually enjoyed a lot. You can tell. I like how with a lot of the other Disney Renaissance things, there was a lot of fairy tale inspirations, classic literature inspirations, and what I really liked about this one is that you can feel the literature origins of the story. There's parts of it that feel kind of like very adult in their tone and the way that the characters like speak to each other, and it's not super like playing it up for a child audience, which I think is fine. I think it's fine to to do that, except for the gargoyles, which is weird. So there will be these scenes. There's some intense stuff happening. There's full on like very flagrant racism. There's some really like fucked up shit, like when Frollo suspects that there's this couple there's this family that's hiding. He's looking for Esmeralda, and he thinks that they're hiding her or something like that, or they're hiding like gypsy refugees, and he like closes the door and he's gonna burn down their house. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty dark. That he's gonna burn these people alive. Like, he's super fucking evil. There's some like there's a lot of kind of intense, dark, heavier stuff in the movie, and it works. And the thing is, it never feels like it goes too far to the point where I wouldn't be comfortable showing a kid that, like a little kid too, right? It's never like there's no real extreme blood. There isn't like really bad violence. A character, like Phoebus, the night guy, gets hit with an arrow. That's it's not super. It's enough like violence exists and it's a threat and there's a thing. There's things to be concerned about, but it's not like real. It's not over the top where I wouldn't be comfortable like showing like a little kid it, right? So it's weird that you have these stupid gargoyles in the movie to add levity, because it is really awkward. It's awkward because the way that they're interspersed in the movie it's like they're sprinkled in there. It isn't like, okay, this is a silly, okay, I don't have a problem with having jarring like tone shifts. I don't necessarily have a problem with having a jarring tone shift in a story. But for me, my rule about it, I guess, or what makes it work, like you can have a scene that's very serious, you can have a scene that's really lighthearted, and you can play them back to back. And for me, what makes or breaks it is that you have to let that tone conclude. If you're going to have a serious scene, the scene should be serious, like basically front to back, and you should take that emotion and you should introduce it and develop it and conclude it in that scene before you cut to the next one. Or else it feels awkward. You have to like let the audience go through the process of the emotion you're trying to convey to them before you shift gears to something else, or else that's when it feels really jarring, I think. The gargoyles, the problem with their implementation in the movie is that all their scenes, they're very disconnected from, I feel like, from a lot of the other things that are happening in the film. They kind of just exist to talk to Quasimodo. And they'll be used in scenes where there's some really serious stuff going on. Like, okay, the climax of this film in a lot of ways, it's great. There's a lot of emotional payoff. Quasimodo kind of like hits the peak of his character arc. There's danger. Characters are in serious mortal danger. The villain is going to like the furthest extreme. The music is going crazy. It has this epic gothic or choir and all this shit. Things are on fire. Like, it's really chaotic and intense. And here's the gargoyle, and he's making a reference to the Wizard of Oz, and it's just weird. And these are like back-to-back cuts of like okay, I'm watching this and something really intense and dramatic is happening, and then like, oh, I'm a goofy gargoyle, and it's like, what? Whoa, what do you want me to feel in this scene? What do you want me? It's really like jammed in there. It's really forced feeling. It is not natural. And it's a shame because I think it really brings down it's like there's all these little bruises on the movie that kind of bring it down. And the gargoyles are really the biggest one, because all the stuff outside of them I like a lot. I really I think Quasimodo's character is pretty well developed. Frollo is a really compelling villain. I like that he's this like authority figure, and you can tell he's like super evil, but he's not like a one-dimensional character. Like he's in like, okay. I should talk about him in a second after I talk about, like, I guess the other main characters. Like Quasimodo, he's this hunchback, this deformed person who is kept in this bell tower. He's been told his whole life that and he can't go down, he can't go outside because he's just, people will want to kill him for being a freak. And he goes down during the festival. He goes in like a little disguise and a little hood, and he's kind of really amazed at the festival, and he meets Esmeralda, and Esmeralda, Kat completely called this. Esmeralda is so hot. It is so fucked up how hot she is in this movie. Oh my god. Dude, if I was a kid and I'd seen this, dude, it would have been over. It would have been Jover. Like this scene, oh my god, this scene where she does this like fucking sexy dance at the festival. I was losing my fucking mind. And Kat is looking and she's like, whoa, yeah, you would. And I was like, okay, let me have this. After I watched Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, or Across the Spider-Verse, whichever was the second one, in theaters with you and your fucking girlfriends, and every time Miguel O'Hara, Oscar Isaac showed up on screen, you guys were like cooming in your pants. He would show up and I'd look over, and the three of them had like compressed into their seats to be like half their size, and they looked like they were gonna cry. Like they were practically barking at the fucking screen. I'm like, let me have this. Let me have this one thing. You get to be a freak in public. I can't be in your house and just fucking like drool over an animated woman. Please get a grip. Oh my god. And Frollo, you know, he hates those gypsies, but she does this little sexy dance, and even white boys got a shout. And this causes a severe conflict that I like a lot. I can't think of that many instances of this kind of a conflict for a villain, where basically he's like, on one hand he's super racist towards her, but also he like really wants to fuck her. He's like super this like carnal lust. This literally infernal lust. He has this great song, his villain song, Hellfire, where he's talking about how, like, essentially, either I can have her or no one's gonna have her, and I'm gonna kill her. I'm gonna, like, burn her at the stake for witchcraft. And it's like intense. There's this, again, this, I really like a lot of the music, the style of the music, with the gothic choir stuff. Like his real just like madness and mania over like, he's this religious man, I think, in many ways. He's this authority figure. He's mad racist, but there's this thing that's like hitting his it's hitting this vulnerability that he never expected. And that drives him to like increasing levels of desperation and madness to try and find her. He's gonna like burn down half of Paris to find this one woman. And he's a cool villain. I like him a lot. I like the relationship he has to Quasimodo. I like the part at the end where Quasimodo says that, you know, he's found like a couple people who don't reject him and who are okay with him for who he is. And he says like, you taught you my whole life, you told me that the world was this dark and cruel place, but the only person who was cruel was you. It was just a reflection of who Frollo was. And you know what else I like is Quasimodo doesn't get the girl in the end. I was expecting her to end up with him in some kind of way, but no. She ends up with Phoebus the knight, who she had more chemistry with, I would say. They have enough scenes where you can that sell like their relationship. Like there's a whole love story there from the first time they meet. Phoebus having like, you know, he's an outsider. He doesn't quite hold the same hyper bigoted views as Frollo and most of like the most of Frollo's like police force seem to. And he has these sort of different feelings about her, and they kind of like, they clash a little bit, but he's kind of charming, and they have like an actual nice little romance story going on. And then he ends up with her at the end, and Quasimodo's like, you know what? I'm okay with that. He is not, you know, he for a time, he was like super, super pissed about it at one point in the movie. And he realizes eventually along the way, he realizes that, you know, he overcomes being what would I call? He overcomes being quasi-simpmo. And he's like, you know what? That's what she wants. And like, right? Esmeralda, you know, she likes Quasimodo and she wants him to be happy and she wants to let him know that like she accepts him and she's cool with him, but she's not in love with him and she's in love with Phoebus. And if Quasimodo were to kind of force his feelings onto her, you know, that would be hypocritical because he's only wanted freedom his whole life, and he realizes that he should let her also have freedom to make her own choices, and that she and Phoebus are okay with each other, and that really what Quasimodo has now, like the real victory he got, was finding people who accepted him and for overcoming this prejudice that has been kind of inflicted on him his whole life. And that's cool. I like that. I like that little touch. There's a lot of nice stuff. I like the scenes where Phoebus and Quasimodo are working together, and Quasimodo is still like a little, you know, doubtful about working with Phoebus, or he has a little bit of a grudge against him because he wants Esmeralda. But like the performances and the way they talk to each other are really, really, I just really like the dialogue in those scenes. I like the darkness and heaviness of a lot of the things in the film. I liked it a lot. It's just those fucking gargoyles. It's a really good movie that has, again, these little bruises on it that if you were to just cut them out, I think, okay, I see the purpose of the gargoyles from a plot standpoint. You need they wanted I don't know how the original novel goes, but they clearly wanted someone for Quasimodo to talk to give him some sort of push at the start of the movie. Like I think there's probably a couple ways that you could go about it. Why does Quasimodo why does he decide to leave the tower and go against Frollo's orders to go down to the festival? The solution they came up with was he has these gargoyle friends. I don't know if that's the best solution, but I wish that it had been handled like them being basically hallucinations, or really play into them being imaginary friends. Like, I think it should have been made, like, he's been in this tower for so long that he's a little bit off his rocker, and he's essentially compartmentalized or split parts of maybe his personality into these, like, imaginary friends that he's talking to. Yeah, make him like a little schizophrenic and have him be interacting with these characters, but make it clear, like, have him look back and the gargoyles are still, like, they're just in place, they haven't moved, kind of thing. And the gargoyles just represent different parts of his personality that aren't fully at the, like, the main Quasimodo is the meek, timid guy, but he has these other suggestions, the more humorous part of his personality, the more courageous part of his person, the more intellectual part. You could split those up as being these little imaginary people that he basically talks to. And you could maybe have them slowly subside over the course of the movie. I think it would be cool, right? I'm just throwing shit out there, right? You could have them make less and less appearances, or he hears their voices when they're not there, until eventually they disappear completely and he just is that character, and he just has all of those parts of himself, and he is brave and intellectual and or perceptive, and he is and humorous. And the more that he kind of gets out and interacts with people, he kind of is able to, like, assume parts of those into his real realize himself. He becomes realized, through his interactions with the other characters. I think that would be neat. But they went with having them be literal. They come to life and make pop culture references that are kind of lame. Yeah, and if you just took that stuff out, and what sucks is that it's kind of hard to ignore because of the way that they're sprinkled in. Because if there was just like, okay, here's a car, like there's like one scene where they have like a musical number and we just went on our phones because I couldn't give less of a fuck about the gargoyle musical number. That's like the one scene of theirs that you could ignore, but otherwise they're just kind of there, and they pop up enough in the middle of scenes that really shouldn't have them, and it's hard to ignore, and it's this blemish on the movie. It's kind of unfortunate, but it's got some cool stuff. Nicely animated as expected. Really cool sense of scale. Excuse me. I really like those shots where you get these huge excuse me, the huge zoom outs of Quasimodo on the Notre Dame Cathedral, and it pulls out and you see just how massive it is. It's cool. Esmeralda is insanely hot. Holy shit. It should have been me. Frollo is a cool villain. I like Phoebus as this kind of like friendly foil to Quasimodo. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good movie. I liked it. I liked it. And then after that, we watched another movie that I'd heard of it. I didn't really know anything about it. We watched The Rescuers. The Rescuers is the 1970... What was it, 77? Yeah, it is 77. Animated film. I had never heard of I'd heard of it. I didn't know really anything about it. I loved this movie. I really, really liked The Rescuers. And it specifically, I wasn't expecting it to, but it hit this very particular sense of nostalgia for me, despite the fact that I'd never seen it. When I was growing up, I had a lot of books, like children's books and some other stuff, but mainly books that were focused specifically on like small people and like mice and their little societies. So I had the first thing that came to mind when I was watching this movie, I had to go pause it to look it up, was this book that I had as a kid called The Island of the Skog, which was, where is it? Island of the Skog, Skog, which was a book by Stephen Kellogg, also from the 70s. And that's a book about these little mice, and they live in, where do they live? They live in like a city, and then they're going to get like exterminated or something. So they go and build a ship, and they take it out to sea, and they end up on this island. And on the island, there's this, they think that there's this monster called the Skog, which is kind of this spooky looking, kind of ghostly looking thing. And it's just like a real, I haven't read it obviously in over 10, maybe 15 years, because it was when I was a little kid. But, you know, I looked it back up and I remembered, I remember basically what it was about. I had a lot of Stephen Kellogg books. I realized I really like Stephen Kellogg. He also did Pinkerton, the dog. He is a mysterious tadpole. He did Can I Keep Him? I had this whole collection of Stephen Kellogg books when I was a kid, and I really loved his style of storytelling and his artwork. I find very charming and very nostalgic, and The Rescuers reminded me a lot of that. I also had, as a kid, I also had the Borrowers books, which are about like tiny little people who borrow little household objects, which is another thing. Like I have this real, it's that they borrow little household objects and like repurpose them. And then there was another one that I'm thinking, I had a bunch of Geronimo Stilton books as a kid. I looked that up recently. There's like 1,000 Geronimo Stilton books. There's a lot. The closest comparison is like Warhammer. Unironically, it's like Warhammer is how many fucking books there are. But yeah, so I've always had this kind of nostalgia and this soft spot for stories about small characters like mice who take little household objects and common things and they repurpose them to do, you know, in kind of charming, creative little ways to do little tasks that they need. So and this movie has a lot of that. The Rescuers has a lot of that. And I love. So if you don't know, The Rescuers is about there's this little girl who's been captured. You don't know why. She's on this like weird pirate ship in a swamp, and she sends out a message in a bottle. And the message gets found by, there's this whole worldwide organization of mice and little critters. And they have an association. They're the rescue aid services, I think. And they do, their thing is they do little rescues for people. And there's someone who needs help. It's this very kind of simple. There's a lot of quaintness to this film. Partially, I think it's very 70s in a lot of ways. There's this message that they find. They have a lead, but they don't. You know, they need someone to volunteer. And the main characters are the janitor for the rescue society, whose name is Bernard. Which that's my dad's name, which I always find kind of funny. He's Bernard the Mouse, who's played by Bob Newhart, who's dresses like Mario. He's dressed like Mario. And then the representative, because they have all these like international, it's so 70s. They have all these like international representatives, and there's the mouse from like, you know, they're all just like these weird there's like these racial stereotypes, but it's in that way where it's this kind of like 70s liberal kind of thing where it's like, I don't know, like it doesn't feel bad. It feels just kind of quaint and charming. Like the one from Africa, it's just a mouse with an afro. And it's like there's like the Arabic mouse with like the headdress and everything and the robes. It's fun. And you know what sold me on this film? It's when Bernard comes out and he's going to take he's going to like open up the bottle and pull out the message for them. And he comes and he's carrying this big like toothed comb. I think that's what it's called. It's not like a no, not one of those combs with the handle on it. It's like the you know, the tooth, yeah, all the teeth on it. He pulls that out, and I was like, what's he going to use that for? You know, why does he have that? I didn't know where it was going. And then he props it up against the bottle, and he uses it as a ladder. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I love that. And the whole movie has stuff like that I really love that stuff. These really creative little ways of capturing the world of these little critters. I find that stuff super charming, and there's so much personality in it. So there's one representative. It's the representative from Hungary who volunteers, Miss Bianca. And she's like this just super cute, like little mouse character. And it's funny because it's like you say that and people's immediate reaction is like, oh, like a furry way? And like, no, not in a furry way for me, but I can like I can see it, you know? Like she's really cute. And I love her little accent. I love her little like Hungarian European accent that she's got. And Bernard clearly has like a little crush on her. And she has this kind of like stylish, fashionable way of dressing, you know, for a mouse. Like this big fur hat and everything. And she asks Bernard to accompany her on the mission to rescue this little girl. And they go and head out, and they're in New York City in the 70s when it's like, there's this really, I like this contrast a lot where New York in the 70s is like dirty. It's like dirty and gross and dingy. But in this movie, like it's all there. Like it's dark and heavy. There's a lot of atmosphere. There's not a lot of like sound effects in it. You know, there's not a lot of like goofy cartoon sound effects. There's some score to accompany the emotion of what's happening, but it's kind of understated. It's a very quiet movie. It's a very kind of slow-paced feeling film. But there's this kind of coziness to it. The way they're walking around the dark streets. There's like no one around. It's this really quiet, sparse night in New York, and they're walking to the New York Zoo. And Bernard is he's gonna go try to cut a path through, and he gets scared by the lion. And this is, you know, all these little scenes that make me like these characters a lot. When I say that like the movie has these real 70s quaint features, they go to this orphanage that she was at, and the cat at the orphanage directs them to go to this pawn shop. And they go to the pawn shop, and you know that it's like this seedy place. They've got like guns on the wall. And one thing that I just thought was really funny is there's like a button, I guess. It's on the wall. It's like a button or a badge or something for the NRA. And I was like, dude, you would never see that in a movie today. I don't even know if you would see that as late as like the 90s, you know? I don't like, they literally, people are like, oh, you couldn't do that today. Disney would never have a pin for the NRA, even in like, this is like the lair of the villain, right, of the movie. They would never even put that there. It would be some kind of bullshit, absorbed in some bullshit fucking commentary thing. But it just exists as it's like, that's just a thing, you know? That's just a thing that exists in the world. And I like that they don't really shy away from that it's not like a really dark movie. It is in some ways, but it's never like dismal. It's Bernard and Bianca, and they're going on a little adventure. But there's clearly like the world around them. That's what I really like that about the movie, is that there's this constant feeling of danger. There's this constant sense that like there's a lot of effort. So like you watch a lot of like talking little critter type things like Chip and Dale, right? Or Tom and Jerry, something like that, where the main characters are these small animals. And what's really interesting in The Rescuers is that there's a lot of effort and a lot of little details and things, little shots and little touches to really sell that they are small animals, and they don't just like walk around, and the fact that they're animals is a very real part of the plot, and the fact that they're so tiny is acknowledged, and it's a very relevant part of the story. And you see that in like the way that they have to get around. There's little, they have to climb over things. They go to an airport, and just like, there's a little shot of Bernard, and he has to like run out of the way because someone's about to step on him, and there's not a big deal made of it. It's just these facts of their life as mice. And that combined with like the way that they use little objects in creative ways, I just really like. I don't know. It's such a creative, charming little film. I love these two little characters so much, and the the villains are appropriately, these evil adults. She wants the diamond. Medusa wants the diamond, and she's gonna take this little girl and lower her down into like this underground cave. Oh my god, you want to talk about the sense of danger? Jesus, like this whole scene where this girl is going, they need her to get this diamond from this underground cave that was like a pirate's lair. And the big threat is that like the tide comes up and the cave can fill with water, and that's a thing that they have to be aware of the whole time. And it's really like, oh god, like, she's like edging her way around this hole in the ground where the water comes up out of, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel like she could slip and fall, or the water's gonna shoot up and knock her off balance. Like, it's really dangerous feeling. But it never goes too far. Like, nothing that bad ever really happens. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know. It's such a nice movie. I had such a good time watching it. It hits these little things that feel very nostalgic for me, that make me just kind of happy. I love the kind of scratchy art style. The kind of, a lot of the backgrounds are very like painted. It has this just great atmosphere. I really liked it. I was surprised to find apparently some people don't like it as much. Like, I was looking at like the Rescuers. Let me go back to the 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. I know that can be a little misleading because of how they consider good and bad reviews, but kind of surprising. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It just made me really happy. I would, if I had a kid, I would love showing this movie to them. And then we watched the sequel after, a little bit after. We took a little break, and then we watched the sequel, The Rescuers Down Under, which came out like, God, 20 years? 20 years after the original, something like that. It came out in the 90s. And according to Kat, she'd heard better. I don't think she never watched The Rescuers Down Under, but she had seen the original. I hadn't seen either of them. And she told me that apparently the sequel was better received, or she'd heard that people, she goes, well, Doug Walker said it was better than the original. And I was like, really? Okay. That was after viewing it, because unfortunately I feel like The Rescuers Down Under for me was just like it felt like a lesser version of the original. I don't know. So The Rescuers Down Under, it's kind of a retread in a lot of ways. In terms of like what the plot is about, they have to go rescue another kid. And not only that, I thought it was the same kid with the haircut. No, it isn't like a little blonde girl. It's a little blonde boy. But, which, I realize that maybe if a movie came out, the sequel's 20 years later, maybe some of these things were direct homages. Maybe those things were very intentional. But it felt like we gotta go rescue this kid because he's been captured. But this time we're going to Australia. And the movie, I don't know, it feels a lot like it's a retread, and if it had all the best parts of the original, I think I would like it more. But it's not just that it's a retread, it's that it's also lacking a lot of the kind of charm and character of the original. You don't get as much of the creative use of the common household objects. You don't get as much, it feels more like those other things that star little animals, right? Little cartoon animals, where the scale of the mice characters it's not as a constant of a factor. There's also the fact that it's just kind of missing a lot of novelty, right? Like one of the most enjoyable parts about that first movie for me was really getting familiar with those characters and the way that they interact, and the way, the realities of their lives as mice, as these tiny little creatures. And when you're doing a sequel, I mean, you've kind of already gone through that. They've already met each other. They've already had a happy little ending, and their dynamic has been established. Their way of navigating around the world has also been established. So what's left to do? And they just kind of introduce a new sort of conflict, which is that Bernard wants to get married. He gets interrupted. They get pulled onto this mission to Australia. He decides he's not going to propose yet until it's over. And they meet this, what is he? He's like a little hopper type of critter. It's a little hoppy guy. What kind of animal is he? He's not a kangaroo. I don't even remember what his name is. Jack? Jay? I think it's Jack. Jake? Oh, he's a hopping mouse. What is a hopping mouse? Oh, it's those little things. Yeah, the dusky hopping mouse. Yeah, okay. It's an Australian. Yeah, okay. So he is a mouse. They're all mice then. Okay. And Jake is like this charming, charismatic, kind of adventurous type who's sort of their guide through the outback. And what I don't know. It's like the conflict's kind of weak because it's like Bianca, no, of course Bianca is into Bernard. She isn't gonna get with this Jake character, and they never even really try to suggest that that's the case. It's really just Bernard being jealous that Bianca is spending, Bianca sits next to Jake, and Bernard tends to just kind of be hanging on to the back of whatever animal they're riding at, that kind of thing. And it's okay, there's never any indication from her that there's anything weird going on. It's the weakest kind of love triangle you could imagine. It's barely a triangle. And Jake clearly is into Bianca, but he's also not super aware that Bernard is they never say that they're dating, weirdly enough. He just finds out that he actually assumes that Bernard, he's kind of okay, he thinks that she's a cute mouse. And he asks her, he just slips in oh, you and your husband. Maybe just to check what their relationship is, because he wants to be sure before he starts hitting on her. And she says, oh, he's not my husband. And that's it. So all he knows is that he's not her husband. And so, because there is nothing oh, he's my boyfriend mouse. He's oh, okay, well now I can kind of start working in on her. And he isn't super pushy. He's never gross or uncool about it. He's a perfectly good, reasonable, noble character. he's actually very, like, yeah, totally understandable why you would be doing this. You have no indication that otherwise that would be wrong. And then, yeah, nothing happens, and then they end up happily together, Bernard and Bianca, in the end. Okay, cool. There's this fucking lizard character that I hate. He's so goddamn annoying. Because the little kid, he gets trapped. There's like a similar, again, there's like the retreading. It's like this kid's been trapped by a poacher because the kid knows the location of this gigantic eagle. Like, what the fuck? This gigantic golden eagle. This kid is the only one who knows where the eagle is. And the poacher guy captures him so that he could, like, get the information out of him. And, like, actually fakes that the kid got eaten by alligators, which is really fucked up. Like, he tosses his backpack into alligator-infested waters, and then the police find that, and they're like, well, shit, I guess he died. And, like, that's really fucked up, right? Like, oh my god, because at the start of the film, when he is him leaving his house and saying, like, oh, no, don't worry, Mom. And his mom's like, okay, be careful. And he leaves and goes on a little adventure that ends up in him getting captured. You're like, oh my god, that's really messed up. There isn't really that much interaction between the mice and the kid. Like in the first film, it took a while for them to find Annie. Annie's her name, right? Yeah, the little girl who got kidnapped. But once they did, like there was some scenes where they actually like developed out a little relationship with her, right? Obviously not a whole movie's worth like Bernard and Bianca have, but they have a little relationship with her. There's a nice little touch where there's like this phrase that the cat from the orphanage told them about like keeping faith and stuff like that, and they kind of repeat that to Annie, and she goes, oh, you learned that from the cat that I love, like the pet cat at the orphanage. So like there's like a very appreciable amount of work put in to establish a nice relationship between the mice and Annie before, the rest of the movie happens. The rest, like 30-ish minutes of the movie. And the mice and the little boy like barely interact. Like they show up and what even happens? Like they meet him after he escapes, or he gets let out specifically so the poacher guy can find. Yeah, that's like a weird plot point. The poacher guy tells him that the bird, the eagle, got shot down. And like, oh, the eggs are gonna die now. And then he's like, oh, you made me miss my chance. I'm gonna let you go because you're useless to me now. But oh, now the eggs are gonna die at the nest. And I would have thought that the kid, like maybe he's just a dumb kid, but I would have thought that like the first thing he would do would be to like go to his mom, tell her what happened, get the authorities. Show them, like, he has the feather. I'm pretty sure he has the feather from the eagle's nest. And the rangers are going to be like, holy shit, okay. Because they know about this bird, this super rare bird. Show us where it is. And then, like, there literally wouldn't be a conflict. I know that it's like, I don't love being like, well, what if they just did the smart thing to avoid all the conflict? But that seems like really obvious to do, especially because as far as he knows, his mom still thinks that he's dead. Like he knows that the poacher guy faked his death. And like, holy shit, who wouldn't be worried about that, right? You don't want to go run home and immediately clear that up and like tell her what's going on because the poacher still doesn't know the location of the eggs, right? You probably have enough time, like at least a day. You can probably still save the eggs. But no, he runs straight to the nest, and then does he even meet the mice? Like I don't even know. It's really weak. And then the movie ends really abruptly, it's just like, oh, the poacher guy does he get eaten by alligators? Um, the eagle, does the eagle even come back? I don't even remember. Like, yeah, I don't remember that much from the finale because very little actually gets resolved. Like, you don't. The poacher guy goes over a waterfall. There's like no, like, did he die? Did he get captured? There's no scene. There's no scene of the kid reuniting with his mom. You would think that like in the original, there was this nice little epilogue where Annie gets adopted, and she's on the news, and she says like a little, and because she like found this diamond, and they interview her, and she has like a nice little thing about listening to animals and all that, and it's like a nice little wrap up. You don't get a scene of him reuniting with his mom. You don't get a scene. I thought there would be a scene of, because Bernard asked Bianca to marry him in one of the last scenes. Yeah, when they get saved by the eagle, that's what happens. He asks her to marry them. You don't get a scene of the wedding. You don't get a scene after the wedding. You don't get any resolution with like the Jake character. There's like shockingly little like work done at the tail end of the movie, which feels weird. Like it feels kind of half baked, like it needed another draft, right? Like another, I don't know, 5-6 minutes just to flash us a couple scenes of how these, especially after 20 years, right? I mean, it would be kind of nice to, okay, they live happily ever after, they get married, and they're still going on adventures, and now here's this new Jake character doing stuff, and this is what happened to the villain, but you don't get anything. The movie just kind of stops, and it's really weird. It's really jarring. Yeah, kind of disappointing, and it's not a bad movie, it's just, it feels a little phoned in, and it feels a little bit like the Saturday morning cartoon of the rescuers. You know, what's the adventure this week kind of thing. And it just feels like there's a lot less care and detail put into it than the original, which, yeah, I found that kind of disappointing. I probably, like, I'm not a big Disney guy. I've said this many times before. And Kat she was asking me, she asked me, okay, because now having with the Rescuers Down Under, which I totally forget is part of the Renaissance era of Disney, I have now seen all of the movies from the Renaissance period, because I watched like all the other ones at some point, like throughout my life, and I've seen all the ones from their weird era that we talked about, except for Fantasia 2000. But like, I feel like that one's not as important. And she asked me which one I prefer. And I looked at both lists, and I was like, you know what? Genuinely, I think I would rather watch something from the 2000s era. I think, like, I look over at the Disney Renaissance stuff, and I like them. I think a lot of them are good movies. Are there any that I really like? What were my basic opinions on the Disney Renaissance movies? Little Mermaid, I haven't seen that since I was a little kid. I don't even know if I could say anything, but I remember liking it. Rescuers Down Under was, like I just said, is fine. Beauty and the Beast, I think, is good. Aladdin, I think, is good. Lion King is good. Oh, Pocahontas. Pocahontas exists. Hunchback, probably my favorite. I think the best parts of Hunchback are probably my favorite. Either that or maybe Mulan. Hercules is okay. I thought it was fine. I think Mulan is actually, I like that one a lot. Tarzan, I have like scars from Tarzan. So when I was a kid, my mom was a personal trainer at a Bally's Fitness. And they had this like kids club that she would drop us off at on the days that she had us. This is when I was in like preschool and stuff like that. I was tiny. And they had some DVDs. They had a VHS and they would play movies on the VHS. And I was going there, multiple, like 3-4 times a week. And I must have seen Tarzan at least twice a week for about a year. It was to the point where when I would see clips of it, I would get like shudders. I was so burnt out on Tarzan. I saw it so many goddamn times. I think it's probably... I don't even know if I could give you like an honest... I don't even know if I could give you an honest like assessment of the film, like an opinion, because I'm just too biased. I have PTSD, post-Tarzan stress disorder. That's the podcast title. That's what it is. Let me write that down. There we go. Tarzan, it's probably a good movie. Yeah, I think probably I like Mulan the most, and Hunchback, besides those fucking gargoyles. But to be honest, most of the movies from the Disney Renaissance period don't really do that much for me. Like, they just sort of... And I watched a lot of them as a kid at some point. Like, I watched I had Little Mermaid on VHS. I had Lion King. Well, I've seen Lion King a bunch of times. Just... That's such a, like, that movie day in elementary school kind of film, I had Pocahontas on VHS. I saw Aladdin. I had Aladdin 2 on VHS. That's what it was. Yeah, like, I've seen a lot of them as kids, or as a kid, but I don't know, just, it never really did that much for me. I'm not a super huge Disney guy. Like, there's certain people who, like, I remember going to Disneyland in high school with my my band class. Long story. And I remember walking around, and people, some of them were just like, oh my God, it's my childhood. And I don't know, I was like, I watched most of these movies when I was a kid, but I don't know, I think like the angry video game nerd is more I would call that more my childhood than like Disney movies. Like, fucking Doug Walker is a bigger part of my childhood than like Disney movies. That's weird, That's a sign of the times. Yeah, I just never had that much of an attachment to them, and I feel like the weird 2000s era has, well, besides having Treasure Planet, my favorite one that they've ever made, I think the best movie they've ever made, the 2000s, just, I don't know, like, I just think that they're more interesting. Like, I would much rather sit down with someone and watch Home on the Range to get their reaction at how, like, weirdly good it is than, like, watch Aladdin again or watch Lion King again. I would rather watch Lilo and Stitch. I'd rather watch like Lilo and Stitch because I think it's like neat, and I haven't seen it that many times. I wouldn't watch Dinosaur. Fuck Dinosaur. Oh my God. Emperor's New Groove. Yeah. I would watch Brother Bear with someone just to get their reaction to the shot of at the end of the fucking bear walking down the aisle. I don't know. I feel like I get a lot more out of those movies. Like New Groove, I think is fun. I liked Lilo and Stitch a lot. Treasure Planet's the best one. Brother Bear is weird and interesting and is like going for a lot of cool stuff. I feel like Home on the Range is weirdly good. Chicken Little, meh. Meet the Robinsons, meh. Princess and the Frog is also, I like that one a lot. Atlantis is cool. I just feel like they're much more interesting than the Renaissance era for me. Part of that is just maybe because of exposure. Like all those Disney Renaissance era movies are very overexposed. That's their bread and butter. I remember as a kid being a little surprised that all those movies came out in the 90s. Like learning that they were relatively recent, like about 10 years before I was born. Because they feel like, I had like Snow White on VHS when I was a kid. And that's like, okay, this is from the 20s. This is like old piece of culture. And learning that something like Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, like all this stuff that was super saturated in media as a kid, that was like only, you know, about 10 or 15 years old, was kind of weird for me. I was like, wow, they really leaned into this stuff. And I just don't think that, I just feel like I don't know how much more there is to get out of them personally. The way so I have this like habit of just sort of like dropping shit in the middle of it. Like I will be watching something, I was like, wow, this show is awesome. This is so good. And nothing will change in terms of the quality, and then I'll just stop watching it, or I'll stop reading it. And the reason is because I just sort of hit this, the way that I consume a lot of art is that I just kind of get it. I have an experience with it until I feel like I've gotten as much out of it as I need to, and then I'll just lose interest really quickly. And I won't be like, yeah, it sucks now. I'll just, yeah, I don't know. I watched enough of it, got enough of it. I'll do that with games. I'll do that with movies. I'll do that, well, not movies. You just kind of, it's not hard to sit through a whole movie. I'll do that with like TV shows. Excuse me. That's just how I consume stuff, which is also why I rarely replay or rewatch things, because I just feel like I don't know, I got enough out of it. I want to do something new now. I'm very much like I consume a lot of stuff based off of novelty and what I think I can get out of it. And once I'm satisfied, I'll move on. And I feel like with the Disney Renaissance stuff, I just don't know what else there is to get out of it, personally, for me, which is why I'm just not as interested in it. So I don't know what we're gonna do now. Oh, we have to watch JoJo. We watched a couple episodes of part 2, but I think Kat, okay. So here's the problem. So, okay, well, there's a couple things. We watched a couple episodes of part 2 of the anime, and which is in season 1. Weird way they split it up. Okay, so one thing I remember, we started watching, I was like, damn, I do love JoJo. I love JoJo so much. I love the way Araki writes characters. I love the crazy art style and the super cool presentation in the anime and all the colors and patterns and stuff. Because there's parts of Araki's writing that are just consistently appealing, like very consistent. Even though a lot of other things he gets much better at over time, there's like just the way that he writes characters, the way that he like introduces conflicts. It's so characteristic of him, and I love it. And I was just thinking about like, man, I do, and fucking Joseph, I love Joseph so much. One thing I forgot is how much body horror is in Battle Tendency. I think it's probably might be one of the peaks for it, especially early on. There's some real gnarly stuff that I think is like cool. Like a character gets blown apart with a grenade and the pieces of their body start like crawling back together, and like their guts and limbs and shit, so they can like reform and like regenerate. And guy like absorbs another dude into his body. Like it's really gnarly stuff. Araki likes body horror a lot. I think Araki just likes drawing the human body, and one of the ways that he expresses that is like obviously in like the intense poses and the super idealized musculature and physiques of his characters, but he also just loves drawing the human body doing weird shit. Like he loves drawing it in weird situations and getting morphed and altered in strange ways, and that is very consistent. Like again, I just finished my reread of part 8, and yeah, there's some shit in part 8 that like, wow, if you have certain phobias, you're gonna get freaked out. From what I remember, it definitely eases up. I think it even eases up like midway through part 2. Like I think after you get through like the first like Pillar Man introduction, there's not that much really like body horror type stuff. Oh, I'm remembering AC/DC. AC/DC still makes me, his powers are freaky. But it gets very much toned down, and then I think from then on, again, it's still like a little, it's still like, it's there, it shows up a couple times, of wow, it is really, like every episode, there's something fucking in it that she like had to look away from. And also, reminder, she still had like a really kind of upset, sensitive stomach and like partial nausea, so that like wasn't doing very well for her. I think maybe the next time we sit down, she might be a little more receptive to what's going on. Also, I think we're through the worst of it, so there's that. But I look forward to watching it with her. I feel like she's going to enjoy some of the characters a lot. And it'll be fun to like go back and actually rewatch with like a fresh pair of eyes old JoJo stuff. It's funny because I'm realizing how fate is this theme that is really important, especially in like parts 7 and 8. And I'm realizing how much it comes up in part 2. Like there's a lot of talk of fate and destiny and stuff. And I'm just kind of realizing how consistent it is throughout the series. It's like, it's a theme that Araki revisits constantly. Like he is really interested in the idea of why things happen and what we can do to change them and ways that we can't change them, and playing around with those ideas and giving characters the ability to like subvert fate. And it's really, I don't know, it's interesting. The more I engage with Araki's writing, even in its very, very simple forms, like in the early parts of JoJo, I really do appreciate him as a writer and as an artist. That being said, I think I'm going to wrap it up now because I'm hungry. I gotta eat. So if you've been listening this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Video in the works. It's going to be out before the end of the month. Look forward to it. It's fun. It was fun to make. I'm going to be talking. It's fun to make a video where, as part of it, I have to play games that I like. So, yeah, be on the lookout. I will see you later. Goodbye.